Hey everyone, we're going to be here with episode 2 of our Smash at the Den podcast, and I'm just going to introduce, we have the same host as last time, so I'm Suvir.
I'm Nick.
I'm Band.
And we basically have about 4 things that we really want to cover today for our podcast. So first one's an overview of our Week 8 tournament, the second one being our Week 9 crew battles, the third one being our PR for this spring quarter, and the last one being what we expect to be for the future of this club and what we aim to do going into summer and then coming back into the school year a little bit. So let's start off with Week 8. Now, I guess we could start off by talking about the surprising placings. So let's go ahead and discuss that.
Yeah. Week 8 was a pretty crazy tournament. There was a lot of crazy losses, but more importantly, really good wins. So for me, I placed 9th. I ended up beating Muffin from Mars, which I feel like I could have never done if I didn't switch to Palu. And then I ended up beating HLB because of DDD. So I guess I'm stuck right now as a DDD Palu main.
I mean, it sometimes comes through in some matchups. I mean, I'm sure Palu would have... Did you try Palu against HLB or no?
Yeah, I got destroyed by his Donkey Kong.
Oh, and then you switched to DDD and beat his DK? Okay.
Yeah. And then he switched to Puff and I beat that with DDD.
Yeah, I mean, I guess DDD will just stay as like a if you need it character.
Yeah.
I can't imagine you like beginning game 1 of a set with DDD.
Yeah, no.
And then 9th out of 81 is a fantastic placing. Especially like, do you remember what your seed was?
Like 18?
It was it was near the 20. Like we had 81 entrants, which is an absolute amazing outcome for our tourney, and we're hoping to like get tourneys of that magnitude coming forward as well. So really happy with how that turned out. Another really good placing was Q. He was not PR for the fall quarter, and he did a really great job at this tourney, getting 17th, beating X Yosher, a Fox main that doesn't go to UCLA. He does pretty well at the SoCal locals, and he does have X Yosher plays Fox, and he does have some Fox experience with me and some others that play in the club. So I'm assuming that was a pretty comfortable matchup for him. So great job to Q.
Yeah, I think with Q, it's important to point out that like he has been having a bit of a rough quarter with his performances, and it's nice to see that at this tournament he kind of like was able to shine with his upset over X Yosher. So I know he started off the quarter with Scrub Mountain and he didn't perform how he really wanted to, and it's just been rough in general. I mean, sometimes you're in these situations where you don't really know how to do as well as you want to.
Yeah.
But he's been getting that tournament experience over the past few quarters, and it all came together at Week 8. So it's great to see that from him. Especially, I think he outperformed the seed by a lot as well.
Yeah, I think he was seeded like 30 something. So it was pretty crazy.
I mean, we all know he's a good player. It's just like you have to seed off performance, and if you're not getting those numbers, it's very difficult to fight for your seed.
Yeah.
At least now he's shown, and with him graduating, I think he's probably happy with how he did at this last tournament at UCLA.
Right. And especially with like tournament performance, a lot of it comes down to mentality. And I think this performance really helped his mindset in bracket. So that's a good send off to his senior year.
Yeah, sometimes you just need like that one good tournament to get back into the swing of like performing well. And it's glad to see that he's done that. So I guess our next person that we really want to talk about is Arcane, who performed very well. I mean, the highlight for him is that he was able to defeat Soul.
Some say cheese.
But, a win's a win. And,
a win's a win, even if you only deal 150%. So.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of that, I mean, no one was expecting him really to win that set, I think.
No.
Right.
For him, I think it's a big moment, getting that PR win, and just... showing that even though some may call him shameless, he doesn't care about what the people say.
Yeah.
He's willing to do what it takes to win.
And
that's very important.
And if you guys remember in our first episode, we talked about how Arcane got second at Scrub Mountain, and then he didn't really show up to any events for the rest of the quarter. So we kind of had, not doubts, but we were just wondering how he was going to perform at this tournament. And obviously it turns out that he pulled through and definitely lived up to what he could do. So.
And I guess lastly we could talk a little bit about David, our only member from UCLA who made the top 8 at that tournament. So that's really impressive. I mean, I know he's lost to HLB before, but he was able to, bring it out this time and win over him.
Yeah, but that's because HLB went puff, not
I know.
DK.
But,
if he went DK, it might have been different.
Yeah, but it was his decision to go puff, and he can't really John about that at this point. Like.
Yeah.
When you have games to say I'm gonna switch characters,
right.
So he still did win that set. I mean he couldn't. I know he wanted his run back with S2H because he's done well against him before, but he couldn't quite clutch it out. And then
that was a tough set.
Yeah, but he did make top 8, and I mean he represented UCLA with getting the highest placing out of all of us and. Making top 8, which is still impressive, and I think it's just a solid performance overall.
Yeah, an interesting part of his run is that he lost to a Ken main in losers, and he has never played that character before, so I'm sure some matchup and experience went into play versus that. I believe the tag was N. I think he got 5th, so great job of him as well. I mean, taking out a number 1 PR is definitely a feat to brag about in its own right.
And I think we could just talk a little bit about like the tournament in general. I mean, this was our biggest tournament that we've hosted with this group of officers at UCLA, and I've only heard positives really about it. A lot of the people who came from out of school. I mean, we got 2 SoCal PR members to come all the way out to UCLA, where not many people want to go. Right. It's like kind of in the middle of nowhere, and getting those people to come out. I mean, I want to shout out PSI guy if he's listening. That I've heard that he's brought a lot of the outsiders and has told them good things about our school and how we run their events. So that's very nice to hear.
Thank you so much for that. Definitely a lot of exposure for us.
Yeah, and in general, I mean, it ran smoothly.
It was a huge room. We had tons of setups.
Great job to Preston, especially for TOing most of the event. Everyone else that helped out, everyone did a great job. I really think that we can throw something as good as or even better next quarter.
Yeah, I mean, going into next year, we'll definitely be, only trying to aim higher. And I think this was a great way for us to end the year with our biggest event of the year, and we look forward to seeing how that's going to continue into the next year, especially since all of our officers are staying and going to be able to help out with those events.
Mm-hmm.
So next up, I guess with week 8, we've basically discussed that. We could talk about last week, week 9, and basically we had a crew battle from heroes versus villains, right?
Yeah.
And I guess we can talk about how that went.
All right. So when we were drafting, everyone agreed the teams were balanced.
Well, but a quick note first. The crews didn't really pan out as planned because a lot of people couldn't make it or didn't show up. So we kind of just included everyone that showed up and made it more of a group event as opposed to like a viewer
experience.
Yeah, a viewer experience. I think it was 11v11, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, 11 versus 11, and we did have to draft because of that fact that, not everyone who we originally intended to be in the crew battle was there, and also because, we just wanted to include everyone in the events, and otherwise, some people would just be on the side playing friendlies, and it wouldn't be as exciting.
Right.
So, we started the draft. Everyone was kind of, on board with how the crews were looking, and we start off the crew battle, and it kind of goes
not as expected.
Not as expected. So we start off. I got drafted in with my DDD for balance reasons, and I was on the heroes team, and they hard call out me starting by putting in Arcane with Palutena, and
clearly an awful matchup.
Yeah, a very bad matchup for DDD, and I started off practically getting 0 to death the first stock.
Yeah,
and,
you were down full stock.
And, I did my best to just bring it back, and it was a last hit scenario. I think we were both above 100%, but he did eke that out. And then comes really, the main turning point of the event.
The second game.
Where Watermelon otherwise known as Yale. He goes in with his Kirby.
And none of us know who this kid is.
Yeah,
I've never seen him before.
First time showing up to the club, so none of us were really sure about his skill level. We kind of just assumed that he wasn't as good as some of the other players on the team.
Yeah.
And that led to him being drafted with the opinion that, this guy is probably, since he doesn't show up much, he won't contribute as much as the people that show up. But he surprised us. I mean, he cleanly took a stock off Arcane and then...
Without losing one of his own.
Yeah, and then just went on a tear for a little bit. It was very impressive to see. Very hype match. I think he took out Hunter Owner.
Yeah, they sent in Hunter, and I think Hunter only took one stock off of him.
Yeah.
He ended up taking 5 in total. So great job to Yale. I'm really excited to see how he does next quarter because I know I got him in our Discord, and he seemed really excited to participate more. And Ben has a little bit of competition for best Kirby in the club.
I've been telling everyone that they should have enough Kirby experience against my Kirby to be able to deal with any other Kirby.
Well,
but obviously that is not the case.
Clearly you weren't doing
No one has been taking my Kirby seriously, and now they will.
All right.
Probably.
We'll talk about a few other key highlights from the crew battle, since obviously we can't go through everything how it went.
Yeah.
But one of the major highlights was Tsukasa goes in against Band.
Yeah, and I got 0 to death.
He got 0 to death, was at 0% down. This was a 3-stock to 3-stock battle.
Right.
So it was just like a normal game, and he's down by 1 full stock at the beginning. And I think the key moment that really started to bring a comeback is Ban lands a dash attack with DDD
at 50.
At 50 on Samus's up B at the ledge.
How do you 2-frame Samus up B?
He 2-framed Samus up B with dash attack.
It's easy to 2-frame when the move lasts a full second.
And, that really turned things around, and he was able to eke out that game and really, keep the lead going for the Heroes team.
The thing with the villains is that they were supposed to... Their edge was supposed to be counterpicking us really hard.
Yeah.
And none of their counterpicks really worked.
Yeah. I mean, that is true because, we started talking about, the first match itself. They hard called out with Palutena. They called you out with Samus versus DDD.
Yeah.
All these matchups, they really wanted to abuse the counterpick scenarios. I mean... And then I guess this leads into our next topic about how, we had people who did throw on the crew battles, and one of them is Penguin, who was very confident going in against Q that he would, quote, easy clap, And he got 3 stocks, did not take a single stock off Q.
One of the stocks, he tried to up B into Bowser Flame Breath, and he accidentally buffered a nair out of it and SD'd it 10%. And something similar happened in the third
stock. He
stock.
got Flame Breath at 0 again.
Yeah.
It's just overall, I think one thing that people walked away from the crew battle just learning is that this is probably more intense than being in a tournament.
It's so different.
So different. It's very stressful because each stock matters, not just the game.
And to everyone on your team, too.
Yes, it matters to everyone on your team. And, there's a lot of hype going around. I mean, I was screaming. I lost my voice the next day.
Yeah.
But there's definitely some shit talking too.
Yeah. It was a fun event.
It's a really hard environment to play in because, I remember when I went in, Hunter said right before the match started, man, it would suck if you busted Hunter, right? And then I end up starting in the first 30 seconds SDing twice, and I was like, well, that's not a good start. So it's definitely, I think it's a pretty fun way to practice pressure situations. We should probably try and do it some more.
I agree.
Yeah. We'll look into it more as we go into the next quarter, but I guess the last thing we could talk about is how there was this part where they had a chance to bring it back with sending in Sammy, the villains team that is, sending in Sammy to go against Bonathan. And
he was on a tear already. He was doing so well.
Yeah, Bonathan was doing very well, and they were hoping, if Sammy can take him out, then we can, start to push a bit of an advantage on the other team. With Sammy obviously being a great player, he would probably be able to take... they were hoping at least 3 and probably a few more.
Yes.
And Bonathan was able to clutch out the match with a B from Ness.
The Fool tried to challenge Ness's up B with an aerial.
So their plan was working. Goldman was only at 50%, and Bonathan was like at 120, and he was just trying to recover. And Sammy was like, "Wait, nah, dog, let me hit that real quick." And he missed the tech against the stage and died to PK Thunder at like 50. So he honestly kind of threw, because that was like one of the biggest turning points, because right after they sent in Hichiran and Pichu, and he unfortunately got 3-stocked by Bonathan's Ness. Probably didn't have much matchup experience, but if Bonathan was if Sammy was able to take out Bonathan, then maybe Hichiran was able to clean up whoever Sammy lost to, and the whole thing could have been different. So don't challenge Ness off stage.
So I mean, the crew battle in general was a really fun event for everyone. We had I think a really hype experience.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people were, on the edge of their seats watching, and it was just really fun overall. And then we basically decided that, we may want to do this in the future more so than just once. And I think the whole year we've only really had this one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was fun. Everyone had a good time. And I guess next we could talk about our PR that we're going to be releasing for the spring quarter.
Everyone's been asking us for it for so long.
Yeah, I know. People have been trying to guess. A lot of rumors going around too, like about I kind of heard this,
Chris
but
has asked me like 10 times.
yeah, I mean, everyone's very curious. Before we start, I really want to just say that the PR is just a reflection of this quarter, and not necessarily a reflection of like how we perceive someone's skill, rather just like objectively what the results say for the quarter.
To the best of our ability.
Yeah, and there are some choices that have to be made when we're deciding when someone's close to another player, like how we're going to make those decisions, and it's a very tough experience for us as the PR panel to make those choices, but we're just trying to be as objective as possible and use consistency in our methods to create the PR. So we hope that no one really takes this as either an attack on their skill or something, or like it's kind of just a reflection of what we objectively saw and how we take that data and use it to create a ranking system.
Mm-hmm. And the theme for this PR, looking at all the data, is that a lot of people have had a lot of good wins, but what really sets these people apart generally is that they don't have a lot of bad losses.
Yeah, I mean, in general, this PR is I'd say that there's a bit of a gap between everyone who's on the PR and like the next few players.
Yeah.
And really what sets them apart is stuff like consistency and their ability to also perform at a peak at some points in the quarter.
Or just overperforming.
Yeah, overperforming what they're expected to do. And I mean, the PR is going to be 8 people, and and it's important to note that on last PR we did have Jugia on there, and he has graduated. So let's go ahead and get into this, starting with our 8th on the PR. And I think to no one's surprise, it's Tsukasa.
Yep. Scrub Mountain Champion.
Scrub Mountain Champion. I think pretty clearly to say, looking at his results, that he was the best non-PR player that from looking at Winter PR. Mm-hmm. He had better results than everyone. He was more consistent than most, and he just did a great job.
Yeah, I mean, in general, his worst loss, I put that in quotes if I could, but his worst loss was to Bonathan, who, himself is a very formidable player, and was probably in contention for this PR if we extended it a few slots.
If we did honorable mentions, he'd definitely be on it.
Yeah, for sure. So,
not even a bad loss at all.
Very impressive. I know he's had some good hat performances as well, and overall, just very consistent overall. And, I'm glad to see that, last quarter he didn't show up as much to the ultimate stuff besides the ladder, really. Yeah. And this quarter he kind of made a point that he wants to show up more, and he did do as well as better than most people expected of him, and he earned his spot.
Yeah, definitely.
Sure. So next up, we're going to have our 7th place spot, which we give to Alfredo. And I think with Alfredo, it's quite obvious he's a very consistent player.
Yeah. He didn't go to as much as Tsukasa, but what he did go to, he never really underperformed.
Yeah, I mean, he had the wins over Goldman, Band, and these were all, good wins for him. And then he had solid placings, solid performance. I think overall he's just performed consistently at what he did show up to, and that was enough to kind of give him the spot.
Yep, he had pretty good wins, not terrible losses, but nothing extraordinary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Consistency is so important in Smash because if you can show up once and then not prove yourself again, then there's not really much to say about that. Everyone can have just like a really great day and then not live up to that, but that didn't really happen with Alfredo. He just always did very well.
Yeah, I think he only went to week 4 where he performed 7th place, and then week 8 where he got 13th.
Yep.
And overall, I mean, I think on that day, at week 8, he was like the 3rd player from UCLA he was the 3rd best player on that day from our school. I think him and Zing tied at that placing. So
you also have to consider, I think he lost early to Welly, right?
Yeah, he did lose early, but then he made a run. He took out Goldman, and overall just showed that even if he suffers a bad loss, winner is for him a bad loss, that he can bring it back in losers and still perform how he needs to. So yeah, great job to Alfredo getting our 7th spot on the PR.
And everyone from this point on has had wins on non-UCLA people.
Yeah. So next up, we got our 6th on the PR, which is me, Suvir.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Pretty impressive considering you didn't go to week 8 and you kind of weren't really focusing on the game as much as you were last quarter.
I mean, week 6, you were debating not entering at all, and then you ended up getting 4th, right?
Yeah.
So, that just kind of shows to how, even if you're, not fully prepared to enter a tournament, you'll still do really well.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I think that what drives me in this game is kind of more so the competing than, playing friendlies or stuff like that.
Yeah.
I really just... I have the most fun with the game when I'm out there just competing in tournament. So, it's not surprising to me that sometimes my tournament results are better than what my perceived skill may be in friendlies at times. But, yeah, I mean, in general, I think that I had a pretty consistent thing going with the tournaments I did attend. And no real bad losses overall.
Not at all.
So I think it's kind of expected that with me also not having insane wins, that this spot kind of is. I think from here on out, the next few players we discuss are all people who've had pretty solid wins as well, and solid performances. That it's kind of like a gatekeeping spot where I'm at.
I'd agree. That's the 1 through 5 kind of just set themselves apart from the 6 through 8 a bit, but we definitely want to extend it to 8 because they're in a tier of their own as well.
Yeah, I think the 1 through 5 set themselves apart with their peak performances.
Pretty much everyone's consistent.
So everyone has a consistency, but when you're able to, sometimes what sets 1 through 5 apart is going to be their peak performance, and I guess we could start talking about how that affects the next few spots, and we could go into number 5, which may be a bit of a surprise to some people, but we do have Goldman at number 5.
After a lot of discussion about whether we value peak or consistency, we ultimately went with consistency. And Goldman had a really good performance. What did he get? Second?
Second at week 6.
Week 6?
Yeah, that was the one where he lost to Suga in Grands. And he beat David there in losers finals, I believe.
Yeah.
He beat David, beat Van, beat Zing.
Yeah, so he did a great job of that tourney.
He pretty much took out most of
our PR.
Top PR. Yeah.
But we put a lot of value on the week 8 tournament too, and that was by far his worst performance. Getting 33rd.
Yeah.
It was pretty unlucky that his round 1 was Tsukasa because one, it's a ditto, which are just kind of weird in general.
Yeah.
And then 2, they practice together all the time. So
And-
it was just unfortunate first
And
round.
like his losses aren't necessarily bad because Daniel, we did say he's 8th on the PR,
Yeah.
and Alfredo is 7th on the PR.
Yeah.
But when you have a peak that's really high and you also have a low where you're at 33rd and not performing anywhere near your seed, it's kind of hard to, especially when that event is kind of like the big event of the quarter. It's kind of hard to put that aside, especially when also week 4 he got a 9th place. So it's hard to place him higher, even though his peak was so good.
Yeah, but I think like his overall results definitely put himself above 60 or 8.
Yeah. I mean, no one else had, even though we do value the consistency a bit more than the peak, the peak still matters.
Yeah,
And,
definitely.
no one else in 6 through 8 can really contest what his peak was.
Yeah, it's a really hard balance, but clearly he's an amazing player, and we always expect him to do well. So I think 5th is definitely a great spot to place him.
Yeah. So next up we have our 4th place, which is Seoul. I think with Seoul, it's kind of I think we had a tough time deciding between him and Sammy for basically what order they were going to be for 4th and 5th. And like we said, with the consistency mattering more than the peak, we did decide to put Seoul over Sammy with just how his general season went.
Because looking at the results, like Seoul and Goldman had kind of similar results, I think, relatively.
They did great at some tourneys and
not
all right at some, and then they both had a pretty poor week 8.
But Seoul had slightly lower peak, but slightly better consistency.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, in general,
It was very close.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I think Seoul had what really gave him the edge is kind of he'd go to some outside events and
A lot
of outside. Well, yeah, a lot of data for him, and it's just consistent data where he's not losing the bad people and he's doing well. So I think one thing to note is attending more tournaments like he does and showing you're consistent does kind of give you an edge on these rankings too, because you're just showing with the data that you're being very consistent as a player and you deserve a spot.
It definitely wouldn't be fair of us to not include those outside tournaments, because
for sure.
It's still a reflection, even though they're not UCLA tourneys, it's still a reflection of how good
he was during that time period.
Yeah, during that time period.
So it's very important to take those into account. So now we get into the top 3.
Top 3.
And 3rd, we do have Band.
Let's go, Band. Good thing you picked up Palutena.
A big surprise if you're looking from the first half of the quarter.
Yeah, so from the first half to the second half, we did see Band pick up Palutena and start to get way better results.
Magically.
Going from a 9th place at week 4, he took 4th at week 6, and then another 9th at the week 8, which we value a lot.
Out of 81.
Out of 81. So, I mean, in general, matching your original placing of 9th, but with so many more entrants and also good wins, it really shows a lot of, there may be a bit of recency bias, but, overall, it was 2 out of the 3 tournaments you attended, you had that Palutena and you did it super well.
Well, I wouldn't even call it recency bias. I just think objectively, a lot of emphasis has to be placed on week 8.
Yeah,
it was just such a good performance, and I think it goes to show that you had the skill all along. You were just kind of held back. By DDD. So I don't know. The Palutena definitely pulled through, and you got those great wins. I think you definitely earned the number 3 spot.
Yeah. Next up, we have number 2, Zingzan, who, was placed 6th last quarter, but he kind of didn't attend much last quarter. Yeah. So it was kind of hard to rank him, because at the one he did attend, he beat Josh, and he had I think a close set with Sammy, but just with the one tournament that we had for him last quarter, it was very tough to say how we could rank him. But
Yeah.
with this quarter, he attended pretty much all of our tournaments
Yep.
and performed well at all of them.
He had really good
I mean-
wins and no bad losses.
I think
Yeah.
week 4 he was the one with jump steady, right?
Yeah, so he got second, taking a set off jump steady.
Which is an incredible result.
Outplacing everyone else on this PR at that event, being like the best UCLA player on that day.
Yeah.
At week 6, he got 5th, losing to Nanook and Goldman. And then at week 8, he got 13th, which may seem a little low, but it's still like a very solid performance.
He definitely outplaced or equaled his seed, I think,
Definitely,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, our highest UCLA seed at week 8 was David at, I want to say 9th or 10th.
Something like that.
Yeah,
So
something like that.
Zing
I think it was 11.
Zing was probably somewhere in the teens. So like he definitely performed to his seed and did great that day.
Yeah.
So
overall, very consistent, very good wins with like that win over jump study, and overall just earned his spot.
yeah, I don't think there was much contention for this. He just really earned this.
Yeah.
Doing good at everything says a lot about how you are as a player.
And it's also important to note that like people are starting to pick up on the snake matchup,
Right.
but he's still showing
His
like
results don't waver.
He can still show that he's doing as well, despite people figuring out that matchup a bit more. And then last, I think to no one's surprise, we have Nanook at first. And
Great job to him. Rounding out another top spot in our PR.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really much to say. I mean, he does have like some performances he wasn't that happy about, and like with losses to Zing Zam and Goldman.
But like when
overall,
you're not happy, when you lose to our second place on the PR and you get 5th at a good tourney, like or like even 7th at our week 8, that's pretty incredible.
And he probably had the highest peak of everyone too, right?
Yeah,
With that
I mean,
Fad.
yeah, I mean,
Oh,
at Fad
yeah.
he did beat Zan.
Yeah, he has a win over SoCal PR. Zan's number 11, I think. So
Yeah.
you know, I really don't think this is a surprise. He just put in the hard work, showed up to everything, and did his job as number 1 PR. And he earned his spot back. So great job to him.
Yeah, I mean, in general, it's great to see that, you know, people who... I know that David loves the game. And
Well, he's one of the biggest grinders.
He's just
always
a grinder.
grinding.
He's always playing. He's always looking to improve. And it's great to see, you know, that hard work does pay off. And I think in general, most of the PR did put in a lot of work. And they earned their spots, not just like by pure talent or anything.
Yeah, this was not an easy PR to get onto. I mean, it's pretty clear that, you know, with most of the members retaining their PR position to some extent, that like the non-PR members are really gonna have to step it up if they want to challenge them.
Yeah.
So that's it for the PR. And
Just a note, by the way, if you want some of the data about how we rank this PR, I have it. So please just ask me if you want to see the data.
yeah.
We're definitely willing to be transparent with our reasoning.
Yeah,
for
for sure.
everything.
And with that ending the PR, I guess we could talk a little bit about the future and how we intend to go into next year for a few minutes. So,
So the recent patch that just came out hit a bunch of top tiers, but
Thank God.
miraculously, all of our PR dodged it except for maybe Severe.
Which
And a little off-random.
honestly, you know, the 3 frames on Wolf Blaster doesn't really mean much.
the down smash nerf.
Down
isn't
smash,
that
they
big.
pretty much just tickled it again with like a 3% nerf.
Yeah.
Not a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, overall, that patch, I mean, it may not really matter as much right now, especially since there may be another patch even before next year starts.
Yep.
So we'll see how that really goes. I mean, going into the summer, we do hope that all of our players do try to attend at least a few events if they can, just to keep themselves ready for next year. With the summer too, we may try and do maybe 1 or 2 podcasts just to like if something comes up that we can discuss.
If there's enough to talk about,
we can talk about. Definitely probably one before the school year starts, just to like, you know, get a preview of how things went in the summer and then what to expect going into the school year.
Because we will be doing some planning. over the
Yeah, I
summer.
mean, we will be doing planning. We do have a lot that we want to do for next year and goals that we've set out. But yeah, with that, I think we'll see how it goes, and we also want you guys to comment below if you can, or just let us know in general what you want to see from this podcast going forward, and what you think of it.
We got great reception from the first one.
Yeah,
from
the first
a few
one.
people. So we're happy to keep it going. I'm really enjoying this, and I think it adds a lot of value to our community. So
yeah, it definitely helps people who, if you're someone who doesn't feel as involved because maybe you're not a PR level player, not a top non-PR player, and you kind of just feel like you may be out of place. We hope that this podcast helps with like understanding what's going on in the community, and also helping you feel more aligned with the community in general, that you can understand like different things that are going on and have that reflection on these sort of events that we discuss, and also just the players that we choose to highlight for each podcast.
Definitely.
And I guess we could talk about how going into next year the PR may change too. Alfredo is graduating this year.
So even if he sticks around, he wouldn't be on PR. He's not a student anymore.
Yeah, I know he does have, I think he's lined up for doing a lab here next year. But, we only consider the UCLA students on the PR, and so that kind of does open up a spot. And with me too, I'm not really sure how much I consider to continue competing in Smash Ultimate going forward. I feel like for me, when with this quarter kind of ending, and even towards the end of last quarter, I kind of like gave the game a shot. I tried to do my best at it, and I'm kind of satisfied with where I'm at right now. And I kind of just that doesn't mean I won't be around. Like, I still obviously enjoy hanging out with all the people here. It's just like, I don't know if I want to consider competing anymore. So we may see 2 slots out of the 8 that we've discussed today.
And those 2 will be hotly contested. I can personally guarantee that.
Yeah. We probably do plan to keep it at 8 slots, unless there's like a huge skill gap.
Yeah.
And that's basically all we wanted to really discuss for today.
Yep. Thanks for listening, everyone. Stay tuned for more. Definitely give us any feedback you have.
Yeah. And I guess we could just reintroduce ourselves. I'm Suvir.
I'm Band.
I'm Nick.
And thank you for listening.
Thanks.